Negotiation. Prepared for and presented at the 2019 Square One Entrepreneurship Training Program. Square One is a program of the Center for Emerging Technologies. CET is an affiliate of the Cortex Innovation Community. Square One is funded in part by the Missouri Technology Corporation.
I am actually a professional negotiator for hire for companies. I've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years now professionally. But before that, I have done thousands of deals in my various careers in a bunch of different industries. That's basically because I spent time in the entertainment world. I spent time reviewing and developing apps and websites. And I spent time managing partnerships for major Fortune 50 companies. So I've done contracts with everyone from Sam down the street to Google and Facebook. And so spending enough time reading contracts, and hopefully you get good at it, or you should stop reading contracts, is generally how that works. And then I just want to get a good deal. Who doesn't want to get a good deal, right? So hopefully in talking about negotiation a little bit tonight, you guys can apply some of this stuff, not just to your business, but also to, Mark is unsure about my credentials, so he'll be checking them later from this photo. But hopefully you can use some of these things to apply them to kind of your day-to-day life as well. So with that said, why negotiate? Duh, get the best deal. That's obvious, right? So people often don't negotiate on, in your private life, salary is one of the big ones that people don't take movement on, and cars. So if you do nothing else after hearing me tell you guys you should negotiate, be sure that if you ever take a salary from somewhere that you negotiate, and be sure that if you ever buy another car, that you negotiate with that as well. Now, some of the reasons you guys might not, or people don't negotiate, is basically, and this was the number one, is that they're blinded by the desired outcome. I can't remember if it was Marquita or Sarah that mentioned something along the lines of one of their clients got a note that somebody wanted to buy them, and they were just called them and they were very excited. 9 times out of 10, when somebody engages with me to help them negotiate, the outcome is, well, but should you really? Like, do you really need to do this? Is this really good for your business? Because people get really blinded by the excitement of doing a deal, and you need to make sure it's good for the business overall. And that's what I'm really all about, is making sure it's good for the business. People fear rejection, someone telling them no, or if they come back and try to negotiate something that they'll lose the deal entirely. That's very uncommon, very rare. It's just kind of a fear that we all build into our head. Again, afraid of the other party's reaction. They're accustomed to set pricing. None of us go into the store anymore and say, well, for that loaf of bread, I'll give you $1 instead of the price that's on it. And so we're not used to negotiating in our day-to-day lives like actually people were a long time ago, a lot more common. And sometimes people feel like they're less knowledgeable, the less knowledgeable person for negotiation. So the most common question that I get, whether I'm being hired professionally or I just am helping a friend buy a car, which I do far too much of, is where do I start? How do I know where to begin, and what do I say? And the number one thing people always say that they've heard is they shouldn't make the first offer, and that is false. So here's another useful tidbit. So basically, don't be afraid to make the first offer. There's actually research that backs up the fact that people who are selling things who make the first offer end at a higher price than those who don't. And that is because of the first big principle that I hope you remember in our conversation tonight, which is anchoring. Does anyone know what anchoring is? Raise your hand. Anchoring? Somebody wanted to define it?
It's kind of where you set a price for somebody's head, and if you go over that, it's expensive. You honor that, it's a deal.
That's right. Yeah. So basically, just like you said, so if you're selling something and you set the price really high, and then they're like, well, that's too high, and then you come down, even if it was already super high, even if you come down and it's still a good deal, because you've set that first point really high, it sounds like a better deal. Any questions about that? Because it's a pretty important concept if you've never touched it. Seeing none, moving on. So there's the research. Like I said, research shows that basically the sellers who make the first offer end at a higher price point. All right, anchoring is super important, but some other things to keep in mind. If you're doing a deal for your business, what are the long-term business implications of that deal? Like I said earlier, 9 times out of 10 when somebody engages with me as a negotiator, they're actually trying to find out, that they think that they're coming to me to say, get me a better deal, But the first thing that we do is we actually review the deal and decide, is this something that you need to do at all? Should you sign this deal at all? The common example that I use, that's a real life example that happened to me a couple of years ago, is Target reached out to a client that I was working with and they said, we want to put your widget on our shelves. And they were through the roof, right? They've been making this product for years and they were very excited to put it on Target's shelves. However, after we reviewed the details of that deal, I said, you can't do this deal. I said, it looks great, but if you sign this, you're basically signing the death warrant of your company because you won't survive the deal. So being very mindful of that, and they were heartbroken to hear that, but being very mindful of that is what I think is most important when you guys are looking at business deals. Simple is better. The number of times that I'm in a negotiation and people start to be like, well, what if I give you this percentage of this, and then out of that percentage we do this, and then 3 times later the percentage is this, and then over the first 4 months it looks like this. Don't do that. The number of times that people come to me with creative solutions when they're trying to reach a deal, usually those are just more complicated than they need to be, and they're actually going to wind up being harder to enforce and maintain than you want it to be. So keep it simple, right? Price per service, percentage of revenue share, something like that, some of the basics. Don't overcomplicate it trying to think of every potential outcome. Knowledge is power. So the second thing we do after we look at a business deal, when I come in and get hired by somebody, is do my research. The best thing that you can do is have knowledge. And so I would also say the same thing applies to if you're buying a car. The first thing that I do when I'm helping someone buy a car is do a ton of research on that specific car with those specific options so that I know what the average price is that people are paying for that based on this zip code and all that stuff, which is all available on a site called TrueCar, just in case you guys are looking to buy a car. So if you're looking to buy a car, go there. It simplifies this a lot. If you're doing a business deal, you need to review all of the details, right? Review everything, take a lot of notes. It's the number one way to improve your outcome. It's the only way to make you feel confident when you're going into a negotiation and help you, come out at the end. The easy part is knowing your stuff. The harder part of the research is actually knowing as much of their stuff as possible. So in business deals, you want to know what the motivations are for those people that you're doing a deal with and why they want to do a deal at all. Try to figure out what their motivations are, because the more that you can make kind of those insights come to life, the better off you'll be and the more empowered you'll be as you start to have those conversations. Has anyone ever heard this term before? BATNA. Of course you would. What is it?
Best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
So aside from anchoring, thank you. Aside from anchoring, I would say that your BATNA is the second most important thing that I can tell you guys about today. If you take a negotiation class, this is the thing that they're going to talk considerably about. And what is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement?
It's whoever has the best walkaway option. It's not
That's
whoever
right.
has the most money. It's whoever doesn't necessarily need to have this deal.
That's right. So you want to know what happens if I don't sign that deal, what I said earlier, right? So for a company that's selling widgets, if they did sign the deal as it was written, it would have been very bad for them. But if they didn't sign the deal, they're still their company, right? They still exist. They were still making their things. It was okay if they didn't sign the deal. Sure, signing the deal seemed like it was going to be a good deal, a good idea, but it might not be. The example that I often give for to kind of simplify this, the concept is buying a car. So if you need a car, you're in trouble. Like if you need a car that day because you need to go to work tomorrow and your car is broken and you have no other way to get to work, and let's imagine that Uber and Lyft don't exist, then basically you've handed the power of buying that car over to who's selling it to you, right? So you don't have an alternative. But for most people, when you're going in a situation like that, your alternative is just walking away. The last car that I bought, I left 6 times before I bought it. I saved $20,000 on that car. So it was worth it. It was annoying, and it took 2 weeks, but it was worth it. And so patience, persistence, and knowing that I could just leave kind of is what does that. So,
AKA. Same leadership, or you want to
same dealership.
Same person,
Same person, same dealership. Yeah.
Does he like you?
No, he was on his way out and he was retiring already. I can talk about that too. I chose him specifically when I walked in and saw the dealers. But anyway, BATNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. When does it not make sense to do the deal? And the other thing that I'll say about this is be honest with yourself and anyone who is helping you negotiate. Because the other thing that I run into, I think, a lot of times with people is, you know, if they're talking to somebody about the negotiation, they don't kind of, you don't want to show your hand, let's say, use that terminology, to the other party. But if you're working with people who you're trying to help, be honest with yourself. Why do you want this deal? And tell other people that you're working with. Know your range, which is also part of that BATNA, right? What's the high end and the low end that you're willing to pay? In the car example, what's the maximum you're willing to pay for the car? What's the minimum that you would, what's what you would like to pay for the car? And obviously the minimum is 0. We all want to pay nothing for the car. That's an easy one. And the reason that we use the BATNA and the system is basically that these bounds give you the confidence you need to do well in negotiation. If you know how high you're willing to go, if you know your maximums and your minimums, then you're ready to go and start having conversations. Any questions about BATNA? Comments, concerns? This all seems pretty straightforward. Some more tips and tricks. Use silence and time to your advantage. You can make people feel really uncomfortable with silence. If you just stop and listen, first off, being silent in negotiation is great because you want to hear what that other party wants, right? That's what you care about. If you hear what the other party wants, then you can do a better job yourself at getting closer to getting a deal done. The other thing is time, right? So a lot of people are very eager to get a deal done. It might take you longer than you want it to, but time is a very important factor. So I mentioned the car deal. I didn't want to spend 2 weeks trying to buy a car, but neither did that dealership. And every time I came in, they were almost as frustrated to see me as I was to be there by the end, because at this point they were just like, we just want to sell him the car. So he leaves, stops coming back. He's just going to leave again if we don't give him the deal. Why do we keep doing this? And so, using some of those tricks, some of that time to your advantage is good. So a lot of times in modern business, I will say that the deals are done via email. And so you're kind of going back and forth on a contract via email, stuff like that. And time can become very important to give you and your team the extra time you need to figure out how the deal is going to impact your business. I say all of that to say, don't rush. If somebody really wants to do a deal with you, it'll be there tomorrow, and they'll be willing to do it tomorrow in general. That's the time pressure element. I'll illustrate to you guys Shark Tank because you guys are entrepreneurs and there's no way you haven't seen Shark Tank. And so that's an example of them using time in their favor, right? So all the sharks sit there and they say, all right, here's the deal. You have to decide. You have to decide right now. And one of them pulls their deal back and that stuff, right? And so they're using that time element and that pressure that it builds to get a better deal for those companies. Be willing to leave, like I said. Not always can you rely on being willing to leave, but if you can leave, it's extremely powerful and extremely useful. Never give without getting. In a lengthy contract negotiation, you are probably going over a bunch of different points at the same time. And conceptually, what you want to do is if they're asking for something, make sure that you're asking for something in return. These are just very easy, simple principles. That said, negotiate everything together. A lot of people make the mistake of, I have a big contract and I want to negotiate the price and I want to negotiate the laws set in that we were talking about earlier, and I want to negotiate all these things, and they'll try to kind of go down a list. It's much better to collectively say, here are all the things that I need, and here are all the things I want to change, and then wait to hear back from the other side. Use non-vital points to your advantage. This is I would say, the most deceptive of the tricks that I use, and things that I would tell you. And that is, a lot of times for me in a contract, when I'm negotiating, there are some parts of it that I don't care about. right? So they've sent it to me, and maybe they say, well, and you on every Tuesday you have to take us to Hardee's. So let's imagine that I don't care about taking them to Hardee's every Tuesday. That's where Mark goes every Tuesday. That's why he's laughing. Let's imagine that I already go to Hardee's every Tuesday. So why would I care about that? It's fine. But when I send it back to them, I'll obviously contest that. I'll say, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, what happens is if they are very passionate about that, is they come back and they say, well, we're going to have to take some time. I've set myself up in a position where I can be like, you know what, actually, I will take you to Hardee's every Tuesday. And so by taking back something that I really didn't care about, I can give it back to them and kind of build myself some credit. Does that make sense? That's a very hard thing to illustrate, so I want to use a stupid example that hopefully clarifies what I'm doing there. And the last thing I'll say is, don't take it personally. When you're doing a business negotiation, it's not personal. A lot of people feel very personally involved in it, but it's not a personal hit. And you asked if that dealership still liked me. They sure do. They still did okay. They still got money, but they might not like me as much as other people. But that's okay. And anytime you're doing a business deal, personal, whether you're buying a house or a car, or signing any sort of deal whatsoever, try to remove that emotion from it as much as possible. It's really hard when people get excited about deals to remove that emotion, but the more you can, the better off you are. Last but not least, I think that's last on the slide, listen more than you talk. So especially at the very beginning, when you're considering doing a deal with someone, listen as much as possible, because that listening time and listening to what they want, what they care about, actually using some of those communication techniques that we talked about last week in the diversity training of asking them questions about what matters to them. Those things will give you a better indication of what they care about, right? And at the end of the day, what they care about is what you care about, because that's what's going to get this deal done. Any questions so far? Yeah.
So I don't know how much this really relates, but it's a burning question in my mind. And that's about, for example, if you're raising money for your startup, say if it's just like with family and things like that, how do you know what kind of deals to develop that, may be in your best interest at that point? I just don't know if I've sort of gathered how to go about something like that.
Sure. So I think that there's a lot of answers, and none of them are right, and all of them are wrong. But also, all of them are right, and none of them are wrong. So it could be anything. But I will say that specifically for fundraising, there are tools, and Marquita could actually speak to this because she's in the back here. There are tools for that reason, right? So there's a format called the SAFE document, and there's also a convertible note. And what basically those two types of fundraising tools, which you should consult a lawyer about, those two types of tools let you raise money without setting a value on your company, right? So you're basically saying, and they do that by saying, you're giving me this money now, and I'm going to really high level this, so please don't judge this, Marquita. But you're giving me this money now, and I will give you back either that money or that value of that money plus some in my company later when I know how much it's worth, right? And so you're basically saying, like, we all agree that there's value here, but we don't know how much, but we'll figure it out later. So there's a lot of tools like that you can use to kind of establish that. Does that help?
Yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
If you're negotiating either salary or hourly pay with an employee, so from the perspective of the owner and then also from their perspective, is it better to always do, let's say, in person or over the phone or email? The power shift, basically.
Sure, that's a good question. So again, all of those are right and all of them are wrong, let me be honest. But I will say a lot of people, especially the employee, potential employee, is going to feel more powerful not having that conversation in person and be able to say everything that they want to say. I would probably recommend you do that conversation via email for a couple of reasons. That's because you can be sure that you outline everything that you need out of the job as the employee, again, speaking from the employee side. And you can highlight everything and have a record. of what was said back and forth, right? That's the benefit of email, is that there's a record of what you asked for and there's a record of what they responded immediately. There's no, oh, well, verbally, yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, we'll figure it out later. There's none of the, we were at a bar and you agreed to hire me, where's my paycheck? There's none of that because you have the email record back and forth. So generally I would stick to that. That's my personal preference. But you can obviously do the others depending on where you're comfortable. So hopefully that helps. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns? I know this is very generic so far as a presentation, but I did want to keep it pretty broad because so that my computer would fall asleep. So that you guys can ask questions and hopefully we could talk about stuff. And then we are gonna wake my computer up hopefully, and we're gonna do an activity here at the end here in a minute. So fair warning. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is term sheets. So, and actually I think Sarah mentioned term sheets earlier. And they were kind of glazed over, and in her version of that, I believe she was either talking about investment or mergers and acquisitions. I don't know, but I like to use term sheets for everything. Anytime I'm negotiating a deal, because it's a very simple way to outline what is happening. So a term sheet basically is a bulleted list of the major points of a deal. Let's imagine a term sheet for a car. It would say, here's the car that you're buying. It would list the VIN of that car and maybe some details about it, and it would say, here's the price you're paying. And at the bottom of that, you guys would both sign it. So both parties sign this term sheet, and it's basically signed to say, here's what we've agreed to, hypothetically, pending an actual contract being drawn up. So you sign this together to say, we've agreed, but we don't have an agreement in place. Then you give that to legal counsel so that they can actually make the legal contract around it. The thing that I always tell people, as a professional negotiator, is that I'm here to help you make sure that a deal makes sense for your business, but not necessarily to make sure it's legal. I'm not a replacement for a lawyer. Did you hear that, Marquita? I'm not a replacement for a lawyer. Yeah. But so I want to make sure that it's a good deal for your business, but that you're still doing everything legally. That said,
Can we go back to that other slide?
Yes, we can.
No, part B.
Oh.
That one. Okay, on part B there, and when I'm negotiating term sheets, I actually like to say, this does create a contract. This is a commitment to do this thing. Now, we both anticipate that we're going to show you our lawyers and add more verbiage and expand it and clarify and all this kind of stuff, but when this gets signed, we've got a commitment, we've got a contract. That's how I prefer to do a term sheet.
Sure, and you can do that way too. And that's the contingency part, right? That's what I'm trying to illustrate there, is that it can be, it's the first step, and it's easier, right, than going through all of the full contracting process. All right, so lawyers. I have one important thing, and this is mostly because Marquita's in the room. Use them. use lawyers. She's paying me $20, to do that. So, it's $20 a year is getting a little cheap. So no, use them. I think it's very important to know that it's important to have these agreements done right, properly, legally, if you're negotiating. I think that you can negotiate most of the terms of an agreement before you involve the lawyer, and then you have them do it at the end. Some lawyers are better at negotiation than others. Some lawyers want to help with the negotiation. Some can provide you a lot of this counsel that I've talked about here along the way on what they think the best deal is for your business. And many of them are extremely skilled in that. But, a lot of them still refer people to me. So I still get a fair amount of my introductions to negotiate from lawyers, and they say, go talk to Quentin. He's going to help you make sure it's good for your business. And then you're going to have a lawyer come in and make it legal. So, and that's that next line, is make sure it's good for your business. That's what's most important when you're doing a deal. Last but not least, get advice and options. If you can talk to people legally, so assuming that you're not under some sort of contract or agreement that you can't talk about the deal that you're about to do, talk with your trusted advisors about what's going on, what the deal looks like. Find your mentors and mentees. Any outside parties won't be emotionally tied to the outcome, and they'll be able to provide you a lot of good insights, hopefully, along the way. And last but not least, consider hiring a professional negotiator if you're worried about it, especially if you are doing something that is, like nothing you've ever seen before. I will mention that there are actually people who, and I was talking to somebody about this today, who professionally buy cars for people. So if you're a type of person that does not want to, I do not do this for the record, but if you're a type of person that does not want to mess with buying a car, you can go online and search for like professional car buyer, and there's a guy, and you just say, here's exactly what I want, and here's how much I want to pay for it, and they go and find it, and they make it arrive at your door. So there are people out there that can help you no matter what you're negotiating and give you thoughts and opinions along the way. There it is. The quote that everybody always says about negotiation is, a good negotiation is when everyone leaves a little unhappy. If you haven't heard that, you'll hear it a lot. I prefer my rewrite of this, and I might have even stole this from Mark Eden, I don't know that I did, but is that a great negotiation is when the other party thinks you're unhappy, but you're not. And so that's what I actually prefer to aim for. So those are kind of something to keep in mind. Any other questions before we dive in kind of to the activity?
Are we getting this email to us?
You are going to get a copy of this deck. Yeah, sorry that I didn't get it done early enough to get it to you guys' plan. All right, so, when trying to figure out the best way that we could potentially work on negotiation, I figured that the best way was probably to practice. And thankfully, Ricky walked in here and laid these things down, but I don't know if they're the right things that I need. Yes, they are. Okay. So I am going to hand you guys one of these things. Do not tell anyone else what it says, because you'll be negotiating against each other in a moment, and it's a secret. So take one of these and pass it down. So everybody basically read your position. Don't reveal it to anyone at this moment. And see if I did this right. Hopefully I did this right, because I'm going by what Ricky left here. Find a partner. Pair up into twos. And basically what I want to tell you guys is you're going to do negotiation simulation. So you're going to have about 5 to 8 minutes to do this once we get started with your partner. Your position is secret until you're done, until we're done at the end. You may not do any side deals or paybacks or any special stuff. Again, keep it simple. Don't be too creative here. But basically what you're negotiating is that, imagine that there's $2 between you guys. There's $2 laying on the table, and you have to split that $2 between the two of you. Okay? And we're going to see where that winds up. Please try to stick to your instructions as much as you can. Are there any questions before we begin? Everyone understand their instructions and their position? All right, then I will give you guys about 5 minutes, starting now, to negotiate the best deal. We will hard stop you at 5 minutes, so where the deal sits in 5 minutes is where it ends, even if you haven't come to an agreement. So whenever you're ready, start. I'm seeing some people have revealed that to each other what they were trying to do back there, because I heard, "Are you serious?" So raise your hand if you liked that. Raise your hand if you didn't like that. A fair amount, yeah. What was anybody want to comment on their experience so far?
So we ended up having the same situation, and I got the chance to ask Tiffany for money before she asked me for money, so I kind of had the upper hand. But she was like, "Look, I only got $5, so I was like, well, what I need to transfer for the bus, so I need $3." And she was like, "You can have $2.50. That still leaves you with $1.50." So yeah, we both.
So you guys found it?
Right.
You found it at the end. Right. Who thinks they got the best deal in here? No one's commenting. Leo thinks he got the best deal. What'd you get?
I got twice as much as what I needed, and I did it under like 10 seconds.
How'd you do that?
She told me what she'd take it as her lowest number, and that was...
Look at that. BATNA illustrated right there. That's what that was. Nice.
I would say having a story quickly helps me sort of become an anchor in the situation.
Nice.
And so then I was able to play on that to see where I could push it.
To convince.
Yeah.
See what would happen.
Yeah, I have to agree with Erica, and I was the first one to initiate it, so I have a story off the bat, and so I was able to get probably 75% of the funding, which was cool.
Which is cool. Nice. All right, so now we're gonna move to stage 2. They're gonna ramp it up a bit. So everybody take your paper that we just handed you and pass it to this side of the room. Pass them down all the way over to this side. I'm gonna come by and pick those back up, which you'll see why in a minute. And Mark is gonna hand you new papers. Again, a secret. So get your new paper and keep that a secret. And we're gonna go once more. Did anyone not reach a deal? Wow, you guys are angry at each other. No deals reached. All right, so Mark is going to come around and pick those pieces of paper up again. So pass those to this side again, and then we're going to talk a little bit while he's doing that, so we can get through everything here. So anybody want to share their experiences on that one? Anything different? Yeah. You guys setting up deals. He wouldn't do it, huh? Kayla, what happened to you? Can we keep the side turn down? I can't hear.
Josh had high tension. I had 10 minutes to make a settlement, but he said he needed a ride for Uber and $2 more. I said I needed a ride to go to the hospital because I had labor pains. We came to the conclusion that he was going to Uber me to the hospital. I just gave him the money to get there.
Right there.
So it was me and Leo. So I told Leo I had a headache. And I needed to take these medications. I needed to go and get some orange juice, cost $2. He's like, cool, I'll take you to the ER room and I'll keep the $2. I said, Leo, it's just easy to give me $2 so I can go in there. So finally he relented. We had to negotiate the orange juice. So whatever I didn't drink, he'll pull it back, do something with it out.
Return it and get my money back. Say you didn't like it. That's it.
Nice. All right, Mark's going to hand out new ones, I think, back there. Mark's slacking on the job. All right, we're going to do this one more time, and you're going to get a new profile again, but the twist is now you're going back to your original partner. So back to the person you scorned at the beginning to see how they treat you when you come back and try to be nice to them again. So we'll wait for just a minute here. Anybody else want to share what happened to that one while Mark's passing those out? What happened here? You guys didn't get a deal? What was going on? Just angry? I can't hear. Everybody wants it all. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that second round really was to show you guys, to introduce some concepts of when you're dealing with the other party that has constraints that you might not know about, right? So what you might not know about them and what might be influencing it, what they might say to you that may or may not be true. Keep those things in mind, as you're kind of doing negotiations here. All right. So once everybody gets their new profile again, read it really quick. Again, keep it to yourself, and go back to your original partner. And we're going to do this once more. You have about 5 minutes again. I think everybody has their paper, so trying to make a deal. Let's see what happens this time. All right, how did that one go? Thoughts?
I got
So hopefully, in doing that the third time and going back to your original partner, you guys were able to see the value of building relationships and not leaving the person behind after doing it the first time, right? So you might have to do business with these people multiple times, and that is something I encourage you to keep in mind as you're negotiating, right? Making sure that you can get a good deal the next time as well. And it's about building that relationship over time. So any questions, comments, or concerns before, yeah, right here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life, I used the armless card, and it was awesome.
You wanted $2, $1 for each arm.
And it was awesome.
I was their dominant arm.
You were so good. You didn't have a chance, Josh.
Great. All right, well, hopefully you guys learned from this. Like I said, I think that the best way that I can hopefully give you guys some negotiation experience is by having you actually do it, and so I hope you found it valuable. Obviously, you guys know how to get a hold of me. If you have any other questions, comments, or concerns about negotiation going forward, I'll be here through the whole program and available after that as well. But thanks for letting me talk about it, and I'll let Mark wrap up with any final thought. Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add for the folks that I negotiated with, and for everyone who had to use something emotional to negotiate, what is great about having Q or a lawyer or someone who is fine negotiating is actually removing your own personal emotion from it, because when we negotiate on your behalf, we get to convey the message back and forth, and you've got somebody in between who's a buffer for you. So it becomes less of making an excuse or a comment or getting emotional and ruining a relationship. So there is a huge value add to having someone negotiate for you. It takes that emotion out and makes it more of a messaging back and forth, and someone delivering that for you.
Absolutely, for sure. Cool. All right, Mark, you're left with 1 minute to do your announcements.